AIDS epidemic. Those words are mostly associated with Africa and third world countries, but it is happening in the poorest area of Vancouver, the Downtown Eastside. Within the Downtown Eastside, there is a large portion of people who are living with AIDS.
Census population in a sort of 10 square block area is about 16,000 people, and probably up to half of those people are either current injection drug users or have been using illicit drugs in the quite recent past. And then we estimate of those half of the people that are using drugs, probably 20% are positive for HIV. We estimate there's maybe 3,000 HIV positive people living in that relatively small community. The numbers are very high for an industrialized country in a city like Vancouver.
The Downtown Eastside has become well known to both people in Vancouver and other parts of the world. But despite the attention, not enough is being done to help these people. This begs the question, how could a city so rich have such an epidemic?
Well, what happened in the Downtown Eastside, a lot of the action really took place in the mid-1990s. So that's when most of the infections, or the bulk of infections, occurred. And unlike some other major cities with people who inject drugs, the Vancouver epidemic was really quite a bit worse than many other major cities. So probably up to 25% of people injecting drugs during the mid-1990s were infected with HIV. Because of improvements in treatment and care, a lot of those people are still alive today. So there's a lot of people in treatment and care who are HIV positive.
We're still dealing with high incidence rates, new infections, with what the WHO, the World Health Organization, would consider as still an ongoing epidemic. Right now there's emphasis on, so we've got our harm reduction approach, which is there, and there's within that is the 4 pillars drug strategy of enforcement, prevention, treatment, and then the 4th is harm reduction. Things have gotten better since a lot of these programs have come online. Like Insight, there's a lot fewer people injecting in public now, which has been associated with lots of related harms. And so, by reducing the number of people that are injecting drugs, we can also hope to eventually reduce the number of new HIV infections. So they are linked.
We also have horrendous problems with our Aboriginal people because of their colonial history and the history of residential schools. So there's a lot of trauma that comes along with it. Anyway, this one young man came across our doorstep one day, very typical of who walks in the doors. He was wonderful. He was like a Robin Williams. But he was dying. He was dying of end-stage AIDS, which he virtually had no immune system whatsoever. So one day I said, Robert, come on, let me get you hooked up to the doctor. Let's get you some antiretrovirals so you don't have to die. And Robert said, no, Doreen, that's not going to work for me. And I said, why? And he said, I need to use my drugs, and I'm going to keep using my drugs, and I'm going to use them until I die. And as long as I use the drugs I'm using, I'll never be able to show up on time to take my antiretrovirals. I might disappear for days at a time. So I said to him, how did you get here? He said to me, when I was 5 years old, I was taken away from my family. The police come and grabbed me, and they grabbed all the children in the reserve. So he was taken away to a residential school, and he said the first night he was put in a dorm with all of the other children, and he wet his bed. Many 5-year-olds wet their beds. The priest was doing his rounds of the residential school. He found Robert wet, so he pulled Robert out of bed. 5 years old, he put him in the corner in the schoolroom in his urine-soaked pajamas and said, you stay there until the morning. In the morning, Robert was still in that schoolroom. The priest put a dress on him, and he made him stand in the corner in front of the class all day. The third time he found Robert wet, he took him out of bed in the middle of the night. And in those days, they had outhouses where people went to the bathroom. So he took Robert out of bed in the middle of the night, and he put him down the outhouse hole. So there's this 5-year-old in the middle of the night standing in feces and urine and cold and scared. I said, Robert, then what happened, as you got older and you were starting to become a teenager? He says, yes, I went to work with the migrant farm workers, the Mexican farm workers that would come to the fields. And I said, that must have been terrible for you. No, he said, Doreen, it was the best thing I ever did. And I said, how was it the best thing you ever did? He said, because I learned how to drink. And I said, you learned how to drink. How was that good? He said, it allowed me to forget. For the first time in my life, since before I was 5, I was able to feel good. I was able to forget. And of course, then the understanding dawned on me. Of course, if you're allowed to forget, you can feel good. So then the drinking led to drugging, led to IV drug use, led to hepatitis C, led to HIV, led to full-blown AIDS.
Everyone in the country theoretically has the right and should have equal access to evidence-based health care. And so for me, in terms of researchers and especially doctors and clinicians and all of society, really, we have an obligation to provide the best available treatment and help to everyone, regardless of what actually got them into that situation in the first place. So I think of it as, if someone is obese and develops type 2 diabetes, you could claim that that's their fault for developing that disease. And so, but no one would put up any resistance in terms of offering them insulin and typical diabetes care. And so for me, it's a really similar thing. It's like, as doctors, as researchers, and everyone, we don't need to really be judging how someone got into that position. From a treatment point of view, you're focused on just the immediate goal, which is to improve the health of that person. And so we know through research and evidence that facilities like Insight are effective in doing that. So for me, that's the real issue, is providing treatment and healthcare to all, and not to lay moral judgment on how someone got into that condition in the first place.
Yeah, I think probably too much media attention's put on the Downtown East Side, but not enough resources and really, ways to make things better for people. The point is not so much cleaning up the situation as, making things much more livable. So I think there has been quite a bit of attention, and I think more recently housing has become kind of a centerpiece of what's supposed to improve.
The BC government, the BC Housing, has committed $5 million to this project, and I know that we have a deficit in our funding through Vancouver Coastal, so we would certainly have to look at where the operational funding would come from in 2010, 2011. But that is our dream.
I think a lot of people are doing some really amazing things. I think the response at larger levels continues to lag in terms of more federal leadership is really lacking right now in terms of supporting a lot of the initiatives we have currently, such as Insight and then other sort of treatment-related programs. So I think there's a lot of great response at a local level, and really at this point we're just looking for more supportive federal leadership in this issue. I think things are improving, and I think we need to continue to work on that.
So the question is not whether we should be helping intravenous drug users with HIV. It should be, how can we help people with HIV? Improving living conditions for people with HIV is a good start, but it is only one solution to the larger problem. While there is not enough resources being put into the Downtown Eastside, there is a hope that things will change.